But Peggy, welcome to Black Office Matter TV. And if you can unmute your mic so we can hear you.
Hello?
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Yay! It's good to see you again. And your doctor friend.
Oh, thanks. I'm her doctor friend.
Oh,
Yeah,
well.
yeah, she's my doctor friend. So, Peggy, welcome to Black Office Matter TV.
Well, thank you for having me, Gwen. I certainly do appreciate being able to be a part of this broadcast. And I got to give a shout out, of course, to my BK Royston publisher. That's Julia, who's my publisher. And of course, I got to give a shout out to her husband, Brian. And more than that, I got to get a shout out to my husband because we've been married almost 50 years in August.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Congratulations. That
Thank you. Thank you.
quite a feat. Did you all
Yeah.
get married as teenagers?
Yeah, well, 20 and 21.
That's still teenager. You,
That's
you know,
teenage.
at 20 and 21, you still don't know much.
You're right about that. You were right about that. That's kind of how this book came about, you know. But
Okay.
I don't know how soon you want to get into it.
No, you know, as soon as you want to.
Let's say let's do that. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
This is your time.
all right.
So,
So this is the book.
okay, so the ME was intentional. The
It very much
capitalization.
intentional.
Okay.
And this is the workbook.
Oh, okay. So you got a
So
workbook and a book.
and a book this time around. Yes. So,
Mhm.
yes, the title is very deliberate
Okay.
because the title came about because I was with a group of a couple of my girlfriends and we were discussing. They said, well, maybe your next book will be called The Meat of Marriage. And I was like, oh, maybe it will be, so kind of went like that. And then as this one started progressing, I realized that it's the me in marriage. Meat is the substance that we need in a meal. It's the uh, essence of a meal, and when that's missing, everybody's looking for where's the meat. I mean, you can have everything else on the table, looking good, smelling good, ready for dinner, but you want that meat. You want that substance that makes the meal. And in marriage, the meat is the one that makes the marriage, the substance of the marriage. Oftentimes we go into marriage, we want to change the other person. We figured later on down the road, I'll change them. But the bottom line is, no, you need to change you. So it's the me of marriage. It's deliberate so that you kind of focus on yourself. But one of the things that I found is over these course of years is that we don't really understand what marriage is. Excuse me for a minute. Husband, Walter.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you have to excuse me. He's in here and he done fell asleep on me.
No, well, we didn't
But
hear anything. We
okay,
didn't
well,
hear
okay,
anything. Yeah,
okay.
you have to train. The Bible says you have to train up children, but you also have to train up your husband.
Well, he was gonna leave. He was gonna stay, then he was gonna leave, and then he came back. And anyway, so um, what I wanted to say about marriages is that we often think we understand and know what marriage is, but what the real thing we need to know is what does marriage involve. See,
Absolutely.
everybody has an idea what marriage may be, but what does marriage involve is the real key to understanding marriage. And one of the things in the book that I've written about is, and it's one of my favorite chapters, is what marriage is not.
Okay.
There are a lot of
So what
things
is
that,
marriage is not? Give us
well,
just a little bit of
just a little bit. Well,
uh,
how
just
about I
like
tease you a little bit?
appetizer
Okay,
on
come
All
on,
that
right.
tease
chapter.
us.
Let me tease you a little bit.
What
I'm going to
marriage is
read just
not?
a
Okay.
short insert, a short excerpt of this. I discovered, and this is when I was young. Okay, when I was in my childhood years. This is what I learned to discover marriage is not. Marriage is not black eyes. Marriage is not bruised lips or swollen jaws. I
Mm.
discovered marriage is not broken arms or limbs. I've discovered marriage is not bruised ribs. I've discovered marriage is not knocks upside the head. See, I saw those things, and I think when you see those things, they make two impressions on you, or they should make two impressions. One is that you will never want to be in a relationship like that. But two, some young ladies have grown up not realizing that that's not marriage. And so they accept it until they get to a place in their life where they realize this isn't what I wanted out of marriage. So that's one part of it. I won't read them all, but I'll go on to talk about marriage because I call this physical abuse, and then I go on to
Oh,
talk about,
definitely is physical. Definitely.
yeah, and then talk about one that's called jealousy and verbal abuse and adultery. So you can see there that as I've learned what marriage isn't. And I want others to understand what marriage isn't. It's not controlling or being, not you controlling your spouse or your spouse controlling you. That's another part of it. Marriage is not slavery.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Mhm.
not what old folks used to say when we would hear the phrase barefoot and pregnant. Just keep them barefoot and pregnant or keep having babies and maybe he'll stay around. Well, that's not marriage either. So I wanted to make sure at the very beginning of this book that people understood what my thought was and my thinking is you don't know what marriage is. I thought it was this, and then I discovered what it wasn't, and then I discovered what it is.
Okay.
And that's just part of the book. Then there's a part in there that talks about blind date. And I speak on blind date because sometimes we're looking at the person we're wanting to marry, but oftentimes you need a different set of eyes to help you see what you don't see in the choosing of the person you're going to choose for a mate. And so I call that the blind date. That simply means you take them to meet someone other than your parents, someone else that you know will tell you the truth, can see things and hear things that you're not seeing, not hearing, to help you to know, hmm, maybe I shouldn't consider this. And I say that because in these almost 50 years, um, had the opportunity to tell some couples you don't really need each other. You shouldn't. Now that's not to say that I would tell everybody that, but there are sometimes when we are talking to people, you can pick up on things that they're not picking up. And it turned out that my husband and I were right in telling them this is not the best thing for you. It ended very, very bad, very bad. And so the purpose of writing the book is one, did you realize, I'm sure you do because you do this all the time, but the US has the sixth highest rate in the world, 40 to 50% of divorce rate.
Mhm.
Um, Usually it's the women that's about 70% that make the decision to get the divorce. And then there's the second and third marriages that take place. The rates are like 60% for the second and 73 for the third percent. And so I realized I am a marriage investor. I believe in marriage. I I know that in order to be married, to stay married, you have to work at it. And that's why there's a workbook so that you can work at your marriage and review and reevaluate yourself. But because of that, because I invest in marriages, I want to help people to make great choices in their relationship. What influenced you? I want to know when you're thinking of marrying and you've married, what influenced you to make that decision? Was it his six pack? Was it her physique? Was it her
Cleavage,
hers?
cleavage, or what's the other
Yeah,
one?
yeah. Was it
Now
all
you're
of that?
touching on what I wanted to ask, because I think, you said that marriage is not abuse, but sometimes marriage is not always going to be peaches and cream and roses.
Of course not.
It's because the excitement and romance kind of wore down a little bit, that means it's the end of the marriage. And
No,
then
but
now we have to go find somebody else.
no, what that really means is you got to get back in there and work. You
Yes.
got to remember what brought the two of you together to begin with. There are times that my husband and I have been like, baby, I really don't know about this. And I've been like, you're right. But we had to make the decision, and it's in the book, that you have to work at marriage. I say, people say marriages are made in heaven. I say they may be, but you sure have to work them out here on earth.
Mhm.
And so that's part of it. Marriage is forgiving. You have to maturity. If you're mature in a marriage when you can forgive.
Yes.
Maturity is part of marriage. Being
Yeah.
able to forgive them when they've said or done, or you said or done, and being big enough to go back and apologize. Uh, I often There's so much I can talk about this book, so y'all just
Well,
help
you can
me
just talk in general terms,
unload.
but I would say also marriage is commitment. A lot of people go into it looking for a way out, a back door, an exit strategy, and that shouldn't be the way that you approach a marriage.
This is true.
Because it's gonna. I've been married 30. It'll be 32 years in September.
Congratulations
And
to
I've been
you.
married twice. The first one was 4 years. It was horrible, but it taught me that you can't. What taught me a lot. But one thing is you can't assume anything about a person that they haven't already demonstrated.
That's true.
I was naive, and I thought all men knew what a husband was supposed to do based on what I thought, what my upbringing was. And I had to learn, no, they don't know. They don't, or their idea is totally different from yours. So, you know, you just, you need to be compatible. And that's what the Bible talks about, being equally yoked. You need to be going in a similar direction, at least. You need to have similar values. You need to have the same thing is important. If he thinks going out to the club is more important than paying a light bill, that's not a
Yeah,
good.
that's not gonna be good for
Money at that
anybody.
club, and then we might have to go ahead and make an exception.
What did you say in the beginning, Rhonda? I didn't hear the first
I
part of
said
it.
if he's making money at that club, we might have to make an exception.
Oh, no, well, unless he owns the club, he's not making legal money. And if he's going there to do transactions, it's probably not legal.
Well, one of the things you have to do is make your spouse your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
a lot of times, and even I can say this of myself at the beginning. You got your girlfriends. You want to hang out. You still want, and but you have to balance and understand that they are just that. They are your girlfriends. This is your spouse, and this is the one you're going to be with or plan to be with for life. And this person has to become your best friend. And so, I talk about a possibility list. Whether that possibility list is in your head or on paper. I talk in the book about a possibility list because we all have made possibility lists about what we wanted in our spouse, whether that's a man looking at getting married to a woman or a woman getting ready to marry a man, everybody has a possibility list. And then I also have a short a list that was omitted out of my possibility list. But there are so many facets to this book that you can get out of my book. I talk about in the book choosing a boy, choice A, or choosing a man, choice B.
Okay, yeah.
That's like choosing a hamburger over a steak. But I do that because I call it today's special, because you need to know that you're special, and you need to be looking at what you want in your spouse or your mate to be special towards you and you towards them. So there's that chapter in there. Uh, I have one that's called me. Uh, it's building the meal. It's the me, where I really examine me. And if you're going to be married, and you know, because you said it, you've been married at 30 some years now, and therefore you've had to look at yourself and say, is it me? You know, marriage is not 50-50. And I don't know where we got that phrase from, 50-50.
I don't either. I don't either.
Yeah.
I say it should be 100, 100.
It is 100.
It should be. If
Well,
both
it should be.
people, they need to
You have
be
to give it 100.
putting in 100.
100.
Otherwise, it's one person is really caring more about it than the other, and that's going to get old eventually. You know.
Yeah.
But now on your workbook,
Yes, ma'am.
what I wanted to ask you now, do you? What is the name of the book? Somebody asked that. What is the name of the book?
The meat of marriage.
Put your cover up again so the person can see it. The Meat of Marriage by Peggy Dixon. Now, do you all counsel? Do you counsel people, married couples,
I
or
do.
potentially engaged couples? Do you do it at church, or do you do it as a counselor, like a profession?
Okay, so you can contact me by going to Peggy Bruce Dixon at Gmail, and we can set up some time to get together and talk, make an appointment, make arrangements to get together and talk about your relationship, your marriage. I believe it's important that we have that connection before we get married. Some of those things before. I know it helped me before I got married. We did 6 weeks of counseling, and
Well,
I am
good
so
for
glad.
you. You were young and you still had a good head on your shoulders.
Well, thank it was all the Lord, because He knew I didn't know no better. But I also knew that I wanted to do it right. You know, like I said, had so many influences that I'd seen growing up, whether it was in my family line, or whether it was the friends of family, or whether it was those in the neighborhood, that I realized early on those situations can influence you. So we took counseling, and I'm glad I did. And I still believe in counseling. It's not to really tell you no, yes or no to marry or not marry that person, but it's just to help you to understand that if you choose to marry, see, I say it like this. If you, once I give you the advice and you don't take it, but you decide to go on and marry, it is my responsibility to do everything that I can to help your marriage be successful. And so that's what I think my part is in investing in marriage, is to whatever I can do, whatever advice I can give, whatever experiences I've had. And trust me, I've had a lot of experiences that could have made both of us just throw up our hands and throw up the towel and throw out the towel and walk away. But the decision was to keep working at it. And it wasn't bad times so much of us, as you've got to watch the influence that other people have in your relationship too. And so, yes,
That's
we do.
a lot of times marriages will fall apart because we let too many people in on our personal business.
This is true. This is true. And the wisdom is to listen to people, because you can gain wisdom, insight for helping you in your marriage. But at some point, it's just you and your spouse that has to make the decision about how you're going to live your marriage. Everybody lives their marriage differently. And so there's no one set pattern for how to live a marriage. But there are those things that can help us to enrich, to help make successful marriage, to make a healthy marriage. And that's what I'm hoping and believing that you'll get out of reading The Meat of Marriage and doing the workbook. Because the workbook makes you think about yourself, makes you think about your family, makes you think about your spouse, makes you think about your spouse's influence, makes you think about how you're going to handle the children when they come along, how you're going to handle your finances. There's a lot of good things in here in this workbook to help navigate you into a good relationship, and a stronger marriage, a stronger relationship between you. There's dating, there's the encouragement to date. There's all of that in between the two, the book and the workbook.
Okay, now with the workbook, I did have a question because we're getting close to the end of our time.
Okay.
And this is a generalization, but in these kinds of things where it's a workbook, do you find that men are more hesitant about doing those kinds of exercises that would be in a workbook, or not, when compared to the wife or the woman?
Well, of course. So let me give you a tip that I did.
Okay.
When I first married, I was reading marriage books too. So maybe that's another reason why Dr. Tim LaHaye and I don't know some of the other books that I was reading, but I would read and then I would give it to my husband because I'd be so excited about something I learned, got out of it, and I'd give it to him to read. And he wouldn't read it. Now I'd go get another something and I'd read it and try to get him to read it, and he wouldn't read it. So I realized that what I wanted to get across, he wasn't going to get. So what I learned to do, and even still now, is I read a book, highlight those things that I would like for us to talk about. So therefore, he's not reading the whole book. He's reading the highlighted parts, and then we are able to discuss. And so I would say, yes, a lot of men do not want or would not be interested in doing a workbook, but it can benefit him as a husband, as the spouse. It can benefit him. But if he can't, then I would tell the wife, just you two buy the book, buy two workbooks. And that's what we generally do when we counsel. We say, buy two workbooks, or get them from us. You work it, your spouse works it, then you come together and discuss it. And that's one way to get the men involved in doing a workbook.
Okay.
And the
a lot of
question,
times their ego makes, it's like a personal criticism, and then, they recoil from personal criticisms. So, you have to tread gently with husbands. You have to be gentle.
Well, okay.
That's
all right.
been my experience. And all the other wives I talk to say the same thing. So
I agree that you do have to, but I've given you some tips. I've given some tips of a way that you can get it done. And then, I always say this. I know it's going to sound a little whatever, but I always say, if you want them to read something, sometimes you just have to place it in the bathroom. Because they're at some point they're gonna be in there. They're gonna need something
Well, you
to
have
do. Read.
a captive audience, and they need something to read.
I wasn't ready for that one, but it's true. It makes sense, but I wasn't ready for you to say that.
I told you you weren't gonna be ready for it, but it is a way. Or sometimes you just have to lay it on the table and just leave some part, and maybe they'll pick it up and read that part. You just gotta find a creative way to do it. This is a night show. This is a family show, so I won't tell you another way that you can
Yeah,
do
it
it.
is a family
But
show.
yeah, it is a family show. But
because
but
it circulates.
but you can use creativity, is all I'm saying. You can be in the car and just ask the question. Like I just randomly went to this page. We chapter 7 changes. We all need to face the fact that there is always room for improvement. Are you the problem or the solution in your marriage? Be honest. Take an inventory of yourself. So that just gives you an idea of one of some of the things that are in the workbook. And if you're in the car and you're traveling, you're going to be there in the car. You
Yeah,
can't
so
get
you have to
out.
get them when it's captive again in the
Yeah,
car.
you do.
Yeah. Anyway, we could talk more about this, but we're at the end of our time, Peggy. And let people know again where they can get your book, The
Okay.
Meat of Marriage, and the
Well,
workbook.
you can contact me at solo.to/Peggy B. Dixon. That's one way to get me. I'll say it again. Solo, SOLO.to/Peggy B. Dixon. You can contact me on Facebook. You can contact me through Amazon and get my book. You can just email me at peggybrucedixon@gmail.com.
Okay.
But we put your website as well as your Amazon link in the chat. So
Thank you, ma'am.
everybody can go out and order this book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the workbook.
And the
workbook.
And the
workbook.
workbook.
And the
Miss Peggy
workbook.
has been married 50 years. She knows
Yeah.
what she's talking
So
about.
she knows something about
Yes.
it, you know?
I know a little something anyway.
Yeah, a little something.
A little something. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Thanks so much, Peggy, and congratulations on your new book.
well, thank you for having me again, Gwen and Doctor.
I'm a doctor friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Friend. It's always a joy to be with you all. We always have fun. We always laugh.
Okay.
Yes.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.